1 year ago, I started a YouTube channel to discuss different aspects of faith. Today, I want to share a personal story of trial to triumph. I pray my story helps you see that God will take a mess and turn it into a message, that He can take a test and turn it into a testimony, and He can turn a trial to a triumph. Please understand that adversity does not make you a victim, but a victor in Christ. My trial to triumph story involves when I became administrator. When I had this opportunity given to me by God, I was really excited about it. And then the rug was pulled out from under me when I discovered unethical and illegal practices going on at my workplace. Instead of me prioritizing my future endeavors like I thought I would be doing, I am now placed in a position to make a choice between following my Christian convictions or following my career aspirations. My natural response was probably like many other people, and I decided to follow my career ambitions. I kept thinking about the years I spent in college achieving a master's degree and a specialist degree. So I'm like, I don't want those degrees to go to waste. So I hesitated when I was asked to take a stand for God because I thought this is not going to be well received in the environment I'm in. My former workplace culture valued appearances and popularity over character. So for me, although I heard God clearly, I struggled with my decision to take a stand because, like most people, I wanted to advance in my career and I didn't want to rock the boat. I tried going along to get along for a minute. I tried turning a blind eye. I started rationalizing that this is not my problem. I'm not the one doing the unethical and legal stuff. I even rationalized more by saying, hey, you've put a lot of time, effort, and money into trying to get certifications and degrees and working hard. And, you don't want to mess up the progress of succeeding at your career goals. So, you know, don't listen to God. But God persisted. And so I resisted some more by telling them, hey, I'm at the highest position in my career and I am making the most money I had ever made. I even had the audacity to say, God, there are millions of people out there. Choose someone else. These were all my natural responses because they worked for what I wanted to do in the situation. But finally, my spiritual response kicked in and it said, but do you trust God when He tells you to go somewhere you don't want to go or do something you don't want to do? And at the time, looking back, I have to honestly say, I didn't like I should. But I started to. And when I started to, I said, okay, here's my big opportunity. You may not like it. It may not feel like what you want it to be, but use it. And then I got thrown back again because I said, nah, my big opportunity is going to turn into a disaster and I just can't do it. And then I'm singing songs and saying things like, I surrender all to Christ. And then God is showing me I'm being hypocritical because in reality, I'm not surrendering all to Him. As a matter of fact, I'm not surrendering anything to Him that I feel is going to cost me. So eventually, I step out on faith and I felt like I had taken a misstep or God wasn't paying attention. Because when I step out on faith, it goes from me seeing harassment take place or unethical things take place to those things happening to me. And you all, I have to think about Matthew 8, where the disciples are in the boat with Jesus and He's asleep. And they're thinking, Lord, don't you see this storm has come, these wind and waves, and you over here sleeping? Why aren't you helping me? Because that was my response. I was the 2.0 of the disciples. I was like, Lord, don't you see all these things happening to me at my job? It's like you asleep on the job. But God's not asleep on the job. He never is. Jesus wasn't asleep. And the fact that He wasn't going to help the disciples, it was a test to see where are you in your walk with Him. Do you trust me or do you trust your circumstances? So just like the disciples had forgotten Jesus was in the boat, I have forgotten that, Jesus is Lord of my life, because at the time I'm enduring false accusations, I'm enduring intimidation, isolation, harassment, and I'm thinking this is more than I can handle. And I'm right. It's not meant for me to handle. It's meant for me to give to God to handle. So for a minute, that's hard for me to get in my mind, because I'm thinking, Lord, do you want me to ignore what's happening to me? That can't be right. That's unwise. And that's not what He wants us to do at all. If something's happening to you, you're experiencing that. It's real. But what He did want me to do is stop focusing on what was happening to me and start focusing on what He was expecting from me and what He was doing for me. And what He was expecting from me was to not nurse my hurts that was happening at my job, but reverse my hurts by using the platform and the position I was in to represent Him. And what He wanted me to do was not focus on what was being done to me, but what God was doing for me, which was helping me walk through the side of the Christian walk that's called persecution. See, all Christians are going to face persecution at some point if they stand for Christ or if they do what's right, because that's going to go against the grain. That's going to offend people. That might even make people feel uncomfortable being around you. But that is part of the Christian walk. Most time, Christians want to focus on the side of the Christian walk that's all about prosperity. And nothing's wrong with prosperity. But they have to also remember there's another side. And that side is persecution, which means we will go through things or have to bear a cross for following Christ. Persecution can look like others leaving you out, or isolation, or it can look like losses. But God wants us to do those things so we can, number one, rely on Him, and then two, so He can be glorified, and three, so He can show us where we are in our walk and what we value and what we prioritize. For me, at the time, I prioritized my career. At the time, I prioritized even getting approval to people to some point. And what God wanted me to prioritize was Him. So I went from just reading my Bible to having to live out what I read in my Bible and forgive those who were despitefully using me. I went from just praying for things that affected me to praying for people who were intentionally wronging me. And that might sound easy to do, but in reality, when you actually have to do those things, it's hard, and it causes you to tell God, hey, I can't do this by myself. I need your help. And that's exactly what He does. He steps in and He helps us do things that we could not possibly do on our own. At one point, things had gotten so devastating in my workplace that I thought, God, why are you allowing evil to prevail? And Genesis 50:20 came to mind, where He said, what was meant for evil will turn out for your good. So I started seeing each battle as me slowly dying to myself, of wanting to be revengeful and to retaliate, and refocusing my attention on Jesus. And by doing that, the circumstances at my job didn't change, but the way I walked through my daily interactions did. Needless to say, after enduring many years of harassment at the job, my position was eliminated because they just said they no longer needed me. Again, this was another tactic to try to maybe destroy me or discredit me. And I was disappointed that God was allowing things to go in this direction until He reminded me of Daniel. Over in Daniel 6, He reminded me that Daniel did exactly what he said do. Daniel continued to pray 3 times a day, even when his enemies had planned a decree against him. He got put in a lion's den, but Daniel also got delivered from that lion's den. So on the last day of my job, I said, okay, God, what do we do now? And He told me, you won't miss a beat on a bill. And I thought, oh, God just wants me to now go to a new job. He's going to open up a new door. But that's not what happened. I applied for jobs and I actually had to end up getting on unemployment for a little while. So then I thought, oh, well, God just wants me to sell my house and move to a new location and start over again. And that's not what happened either. What happened is it's been 4 years and 9 months and I'm still unemployed. But I hadn't missed a beat on a bill. See, God taught me when God is the source, everything else is a resource. God didn't use my credentials, degrees, work experience, certifications, or any of that to provide for me. He used something unexpected. He surprised me. He caused people who had heard about the way I had been dismissed from my job. He caused church groups and friends and family, and neighbors and communities to reach out to me and start to help me with my bills. Now, everybody's like, okay, big deal. Well, here's where the big deal is. It's happened for 4 years and 9 months. Not 4 days, not 4 months, but 4 years and 9 months. For that to happen for that long, that's only God sustaining me. Only God can sustain you with or without a job. For example, I currently am driving a luxury car, Mercedes-Benz, that somebody gave to me to borrow so I could have transportation. Or there was a time when my roof was damaged and was leaking really bad and it had to be replaced, and that money was not in my budget. And business owners donated the roof to me. They literally donated an entire architect roof to me. I've had groceries purchased for me. I've had lawn services done for me. And I've had gift cards given to me for me to shop. Things that I would have regularly done by working a job are now just being done for me because God is laying it on people's hearts or telling people, and it's nothing for me to get a call to say, hey, is everything okay? Or do you need something? Or for somebody to walk up to me and say, hey, how are your bills happening? That started blowing my mind, especially when it was happening during COVID when everybody was struggling and, resources were short, but I'm still being provided for. The next thing is, during this time, I learned that God is relational and not transactional. And even though I knew that, I'm actually having to practice it now because God is showing me it's not because of anything I had done so good, or it's not because of the way I was living. I paid my tithes and offering, went to church, volunteered, did the common things Christians do, read my Bible and prayed every day. And those are great things to do. But he's saying, what's your relationship like with me, Tracy? And he's saying, where's your heart? Where are your priorities? What are you dedicated or are you committed to? And so that caused me to look at how we are called to be spiritual warriors when we decide to follow Christ. We are expected to stand for him in a world of darkness. We're expected to take up a cross. And when we're doing that, we're not being exceptional. We'll say, oh, that's an exception to the rule. But that's not. That's the rule. That's what he wants us to do. So during this time of uncertainty in the world today, we have to be purposeful to intentionally live for him no matter the cost. The last thing I want to share with you is God kept his promises and he never left me, but he did redirect me. He redirected me to look at his power versus my problems. So in his power, he had me go back to school, something I was never ever planning on doing. And this year, I should graduate with a doctorate degree if all goes well. In addition, he had me use this time while I was off of work to write a book. And I wrote a series of books actually that's going to be called Reflections of a Warrior. And it was to talk about how waiting time is not wasted time. It's to talk about how delayed is not denied. And it's to talk about how to be better and not be bitter when you are faced with adversity. So for me, I feel these are trials to triumph, and I'm intrigued to see what God has in store for me in the next chapter of my life. I don't know what's happening in your life right now, but I do know God is faithful. He cares, and He will never fail you. If you could change your perspective from focusing on what is happening to you and start thinking about what God has done for you, it's going to be a game changer for you walking through uncertain times. Thank you for having Tea Times with Tracy.